I was not supposed to stop. Hospitals make me uneasy. They are too quiet, too white, and they smell like judgment. I came here only to confirm a death and disappear before sunrise. Then I saw her. A nurse stood beside a body bag with her shoulders shaking, trying to keep her grief silent. The way she cried did not sound like sadness. It sounded like a confession that had lost its priest. I told myself to keep walking. I even turned once. But then her hand slipped, brushing the tag that hung from the zipper. My eyes caught the name printed there, and my blood froze. It was him. The one man I had promised would be safe. For a moment, the corridor folded around me. Every heartbeat became a hammer against memory. The past, patient and merciless, had found my address again. She lifted her head. Her eyes were swollen, her lips trembling. A face carved by sleepless nights and the weight of trying to save others. She did not look like a stranger. She looked like a consequence. I had ordered deaths. I had erased names. Yet nothing had ever felt like this. Because the woman crying beside that body was mourning the proof of my sin. I did not know her name. I did not need to. I knew that everything I had buried had finally risen, and for the first time in years, I did not feel like a boss. I felt like a man who had just met his punishment. My name is Lorenzo Vale. In my world, mercy is weakness and regret is a language no one speaks. I learned early that silence has power, and fear is the only currency that never loses its value. They call me many things. The ghost, the gentleman reaper, the man who makes disappearances look like fate. They are wrong about most of it, but not about the blood. There is always blood. I built an empire on the bones of promises I never kept. I learned to survive by believing a simple lie, that I could control the cost of every sin I committed. That lie carried me through every deal, every betrayal, every night when the city whispered my name like a warning. But tonight, in that corridor, the lie broke. The hospital was quiet, but the silence was not kind. It pressed against my ribs, heavy and knowing. The air smelled of antiseptic and steel, a mixture too clean for a man like me. I stood there, staring at the woman whose grief had stolen my breath, and for the first time I understood what it meant to be haunted while still alive. I told myself to leave, to turn my back and let the past stay zipped inside that bag. But my feet betrayed me. They moved closer, drawn not by curiosity, but by guilt, wearing a familiar face. The nurse still did not look up. Her hands were pale against the black fabric, trembling in small, stubborn circles as if she could smooth away death. A thin rosary slipped from her wrist and struck the metal rail with a soft, hollow sound. That sound followed me into every heartbeat that came after. I should have turned away. Instead, I asked, "Who was he?" Her voice was quiet but sharp, like glass under light. His name was Amara Ardan. He was my brother. The name hit me harder than any bullet ever had. Mateo. The boy with the crooked smile who once swore loyalty to me, who said he would die for the family but begged me to spare his sister from our world. I kept that promise. Or I believed I did. The truth was, no one ever really leaves the shadow they were born under. My reach was long and my enemies longer. Mateo's blood was on my hands even if another man pulled the trigger. The nurse lifted her eyes then, wide, tear-stained, unknowingly holding a mirror to my soul. "You knew him?" she asked. I forced my voice steady. "Yes, I knew him." She nodded, not noticing the weight behind the words. "He was trying to start over. He said the past was finished." I wanted to tell her that the past never ends. It waits. It learns your footsteps. And when it decides, it finds you standing exactly where you thought you were safe. That was when I knew my sins had learned my name. Her name was Amara. The sound of it did something strange inside me, as if a locked room in my chest had opened and forgotten how to close again. Amara Ardan, Mateo's sister. The one I promised to protect by keeping my distance. The one I had failed before we had ever truly met. She did not look at me when she spoke again. The detectives told me it was a robbery. They said he was in the wrong place at the wrong time. Her voice was steady, but it trembled beneath the surface like a wire pulled too tight. "Do you believe them?" I asked. "No." She brushed a strand of hair from her face, smearing the salt of her tears. My brother never went anywhere by accident. I wanted to tell her that she was right. That Mateo's death was no robbery. That the men who killed him did it under my orders, even if I did not pull the trigger myself. But the words would not form. They hung in the air like ghosts that refused to be named. Instead, I said, "Sometimes people find themselves in the wrong story. They do not realize it until it is too late." She looked at me then, really looked, eyes swollen but clear. "And which story are you in?" "The one that never ends well," I said, her lips pressed together. I could see the question building, the one that might unravel everything. But she swallowed it and turned back toward the body bag. "He used to say that too," she whispered. The corridor lights flickered above us, a slow pulse that matched the rhythm of her breathing. I could hear the distant hum of machines, the faint drip of water somewhere down the hall. The world had narrowed to this quiet room, her grief, and my guilt sitting between us like a third presence neither of us could name. "Do you have anyone?" I asked softly. "Someone to help you through this?" Her hands tightened around the edge of the sheet. "I have his son," she said. "A boy who still asks when his uncle will visit. I have to tell him that promise is over." The words struck deeper than I expected. For a moment I saw myself years ago, a boy with blood on his shoes, asking a question no one had the courage to answer. I wanted to give her something, anything, that would make the world hurt less. But all I had ever given anyone was the opposite. She reached into her pocket and pulled out a small silver key. "He left this for me once," she said. "Said it opened a locker at the train station. But when I checked, there was nothing inside." I think it was his way of saying he was free. Freedom. The word tasted like a lie. I had chased it my entire life, but it always turned to dust when I tried to hold it. I took a step closer before I could stop myself. "Amara," I said. "Whatever he was running from, it will not touch you now. I promise." Her eyes lifted to mine, cautious, searching. "You talk like a man who makes promises often." "I do," I said quietly. "And I have broken most of them." The words seemed to hang there, honest in a way I could not afford. Her gaze softened, not with forgiveness, but with understanding, the kind that binds two people who share the same wound, even if they do not yet know it. Then, for the first time, she smiled. It was small, fragile, almost accidental, like light breaking through clouds that did not expect to part. "Thank you," she said. I nodded, unable to speak. Because if I did, the truth might follow. When I left the hospital that night, the rain had started again. Each drop sounded like a name. Mateo's, Amara's, mine, and I realized something I had not wanted to face. This was not the end of my past. It was the beginning of my punishment. I returned to the hospital the next evening. I told myself it was to ensure that the detectives had closed their files, that no one had traced Mateo's name back to me. But that was a lie dressed in reason. The truth was simpler. I wanted to see her again. Amara. She was sitting at the far end of the corridor, surrounded by the hush of midnight. The overhead light flickered once every few seconds, turning her face into a rhythm of shadow and glow. Her hands were folded around a paper cup of coffee that had long gone cold. "You came back," she said softly when she saw me. "Yes." Her eyes held the question she did not ask. I answered it anyway. "I was near," I said, "and I wanted to make sure you were all right." "I am not," she replied, but there was no bitterness in her voice. "But I will be." She looked tired in a way that had nothing to do with sleepless nights. It was the kind of exhaustion that comes from losing something you thought you had already lost long ago. I stood beside her. "You should go home, rest." She shook her head. "Home is quieter than this place." That is what makes it harder. Her honesty disarmed me. In my world, silence is safety. In hers, it was punishment. We spoke for a long time that night, not about Mateo, not about guilt, but about small things that did not matter and therefore mattered most. She told me she used to paint before nursing school. I told her I used to play piano before I learned that soft hands were a liability. Our words drifted between us like smoke, fragile, shapeless, and somehow necessary. When I finally left, she said, "Thank you for listening." I wanted to tell her that she had been the one saving me from a silence that had grown too heavy to bear. But I said only, "You are welcome." The next nights blurred together. I began to time my visits to the hours I knew she would be there. She stopped asking why. There was something dangerous in the way she looked at me. Not desire, not yet, but trust. Trust was worse. She told me about her nephew, Mateo's son, a boy of 8 who refused to sleep without the hallway light on. I listened and felt something move inside me. An ache that was not quite sorrow and not quite longing. The ache of wanting to be better than I was. Even for a moment one night as she spoke, she noticed the scar along my left wrist. "That looks deep," she said. "It was a long time ago," I told her. "Does it still hurt?" "Only when I forget why it is there." She studied me for a moment. "You speak like a man who carries ghosts." "I do," I said quietly. "And some of them still remember my name." Her gaze lingered on me, and for a moment, I believed she saw through everything. The polished suit, the calm tone, the mask of a man who controls chaos. I thought she might reach for my hand. Instead, she whispered, "Ghosts do not come to hospitals. They go to confession." The truth of it almost broke me. I thought I could keep the secret contained. But secrets have a way of finding air. It happened on the 7th night. I had just left the hospital when 2 of my men arrived at the parking lot. They were reckless, young, loyal in all the wrong ways. One of them said too much, too loudly. "Boss, the car is ready." The word cut through the air like a blade. Boss. Amara was standing by the door, her coat half-buttoned, watching me. The sound froze her. The expression on her face changed. Confusion first, then disbelief. Then horror as understanding began to take shape. I could see it happen in slow motion, as if fate itself wanted me to witness every second of my undoing. "You," she whispered. "You are Lorenzo Vale. There was no point in denying it." "Yes," she stepped back. "You killed my brother." The truth landed between us like an explosion, quiet but final. "I ordered a job," I said. "But I did not know—" "Do not lie to me," her voice cracked. "You gave the order. His name, his address. It all began with you." I took a breath that felt like glass in my lungs. You are right. For the first time, I saw something break inside her. Not anger, but faith. The faith that people, even broken ones, could still be good. "You came here to make sure he was dead," she said, her tone trembling with disgust. "And when you saw me crying, what? You felt guilty? You thought redemption was a conversation you could buy?" "No." My voice was quiet, desperate, unguarded. "I came to see if there was still anything in me that could feel." She turned away, tears falling fast now, no longer silent. "You should leave, Lorenzo, before I forget that you are human." Her words hit harder than any bullet ever could. I wanted to explain that I had spent my life trying to control the uncontrollable. That Matteo's death had not been meant as punishment, only as prevention. But intent does not erase outcome. When she finally walked away, her footsteps echoed down the corridor like a sentence being read aloud. I stood alone under the dying lights, surrounded by the ghosts of every choice I had ever made, and I understood that I had just lost the only person who could have forgiven me. The parking lot was alive with noise, but all I heard was her breathing. Amara stood behind me, her voice lost beneath the sirens and shouts. My men were confused, the police were tense, and the night smelled of rain and gun oil. I raised my hands and stepped forward. "Do not fire," I said. "I am surrendering. No one believed me. In my world, surrender is a word spoken only by liars." But I meant it. I was finished building thrones from other men's bones. A single sound ended everything. One gunshot, nothing more. I felt the heat rip through my side and the strength left my legs. The asphalt met me like an old enemy. Amara was suddenly there. She knelt beside me, her hands pressing down on the wound. "Stay with me," she whispered. Her eyes were full of terror and defiance. The same eyes her brother had when he swore he would protect her. The same eyes I betrayed. "It is all right," I said. "You are safe now," she shook her head. "You do not get to decide that anymore." Her words cut deeper than the bullet. I wanted to tell her that she was right, that I had no right to speak of safety when I had destroyed so much of it. "Why did you come here?" she asked, her voice breaking. "To find out if I was still capable of regret," I said. "Now I know." Blood filled my throat. I tasted metal and rain. I reached into my coat and pulled out the small locket I had carried for years. "Give this to your nephew. Tell him to remember that even monsters can choose one good thing before the end." She took it, her fingers trembling. Tears fell onto my cheek, warm against the cold night. "Amara," I said softly, "forgive me." Her voice was barely a whisper. "You are forgiven, but it will not save you." "I do not want to be saved," I said. "I only want this to mean something." The sound of sirens faded. The air became light, thin, distant. I thought of Mateo's laugh, of the piano keys I never touched again, of Amara's trembling smile when she still believed I was a stranger trying to help. Then everything went still. No pain, no fear, only quiet. The kind of quiet that does not accuse, it understands. I had spent my life running from ghosts. Tonight, I became one. They told me later that the shot was an accident. They said fear pulled the trigger, not intent. But in the end, intent does not matter. Death answers every question the same way, with silence. Lorenzo Vale was buried 3 days later under a false name. No one came except me. The city kept moving. Cars passed, lights flickered, and the world pretended it had not lost a monster who had tried, for one heartbeat, to be human. I kept the locket he gave me. I placed it beside Mateo's photograph and the small flashlight my nephew used to hold at night. The boy sleeps without it now. I tell him stories about courage and truth, but I never mention the man who died to give him peace. Sometimes I stand by the hospital window where it began. The rain still falls the same way. When I close my eyes, I hear a breath that is not mine. Steady, calm, unafraid. It sounds like a man forgiving himself too late. If you were me, would you forgive him? Thank you for feeling this with me.